Welcome back to another episode of All Philly All the Time. A lot has happened since we were last here 2 weeks ago. The Phillies started a playoff series and ended a playoff series in devastating fashion. The Eagles had their bye week, and we're recording this right after they played the Browns on Sunday. So, lots to talk about. Luke, just general. We don't have to go too in depth on the Phillies because we did some awesome live pre and post game shows. Shout out Tyler and Heat Ratio Sports. So I believe from game 3 and 4, those are on our channel. Games 1 and 2, it wasn't connected to our channel yet, but games 3 and 4, the two saddest ones, you can go check those out on our channel. We talked about it, plenty live reaction there, but now that you've had some time to kind of sit with it over the weekend, Luke, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I've come to terms with it because there's ultimately nothing I can do about it. I think I've just realized that this is normal, that there is no disappointment in life, that there's no hopefulness in life, that this is just I say in life, I mean in life of a Philadelphia sports fan. I don't mean in all of life. I just mean in the life of a Philadelphia sports fan. That this is just normal. I think obviously playoffs, I wanted to see the Phillies succeed. And during the playoffs, I wanted to see the Phillies succeed. And as much as my Phillies bias had them winning in the series, I think there was a part of me that knew they weren't going to win the series. Just seeing the fact that they were 33-33 after the All-Star break and they just sucked at the end of the year, to put it lightly. Yeah, I think I kind of saw it coming. And as much as I hate to admit that, it's pretty normal for a Philadelphia sports fan nowadays. You know, we've been in the playoffs in all four of the main sports over the last, 5 years at some point in time. Some teams more than others. Some teams have made it to the championship. Some teams have made it to conference finals, divisional finals, wherever they've made it. But they have all made it to the playoffs in the last couple of years. And then they all just lose.
So it sounds like Luke is taking some wise words from Thanos and saying that this is inevitable.
Pretty much. I think that's a great way to put it. Speaking of Thanos, Owen met Thanos this weekend.
What? Do you have something to tell us, Owen?
Met Thanos?
Yeah, your friend. Your Marvel friend.
How's he Thanos?
I don't know. He's got a tattoo of Loki. I feel like after you kill someone, you want to get them tattooed.
Oh, that's your thought process? If you kill somebody, you tattoo them on you.
Now he's pulling a Black Panther reference.
Killmonger did that. He killed people, and I knew something.
Wow. Oh, and I am so proud of you.
He didn't tattoo them, but a little mark for each person.
Yeah,
I watched Black
Owen,
Panther.
I'm so proud of you.
You're right on it, Owen. And some stats from
You're growing.
He is growing. See, this makes Luke way happier than the
You know who's not growing? Philadelphia sports.
Therapy.
But Owen, you are growing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is like character development right here. You're seeing it live right in front of your eyes.
I was a flat character, but now I'm a round character.
Were you calling me a flat character before? Jeez.
No, I thought I was a character developing.
Yeah, well, speaking of characters developing, sometimes they develop in the wrong way, and the Phillies, their batting average was 186 through the entire series, which is really bad. That's like 18%. Yeah, I could honestly probably do better than that. Like 18% is horrible. I mean, maybe not, but still, 18%. They had 3 home runs, okay, to the Mets 7, so they got more than doubled up on home runs. If you combine second and third base hits, they tied the Mets there. But then hits in general, they lost 36-24 throughout the entire series. So they really just got outplayed on all fronts. It wasn't close. The Phillies bullpen and their hitters were just awful. They got outplayed in both aspects, offensively and defensively. So yeah, it was just not fun to watch. I mean, the Mets just looked like a better team. I hadn't been watching a whole lot of the Phillies during the regular season, but I could tell that what was going on was really bad. I mean, they would go entire stretches of not even getting a hit, or they would get one walk, two walks, and then do nothing on offense. So it looked really, really frustrating. And it made me glad that I didn't watch a whole lot of the other games, because if they would have looked like that, I mean, that looked really frustrating. So
although that's the thing, that's how you know a team was so different in the regular season. Because Parker, are you telling me that team that you saw in this playoff series could win 90 games?
No, that team was horrible. The team that I was watching.
Exactly. And so that's why this season was so fun to watch, because you saw a team that was able to win, 91 games, I believe?
95.
95. I thought we only won 91. Wow. Giving us enough. 95 wins, and then they go and do that. I think that's the biggest disappointing part about it, is like, for someone in Parker's shoes who maybe didn't watch a ton of the regular season and then comes to watch the playoffs, it's, make them look like an awful team, when in reality, from the 95 wins that they put up that season, that they're a talented team that has the power to hit well, that has the pitching to, throw lights out, and then to go and do that is just very disappointing to see.
And that's been my argument against baseball in terms of like why there is so many games. Like, I know for the history, the stats, like you can't cut the amount of games down, but you have 162 games. That's literally almost half of an entire year you're just spending playing games. Like, it's so many games, and then it just all doesn't really matter a whole lot, because then the postseason comes and your 95 wins just get thrown out the window. So it just seems like there's so many games when you could make them more valuable by just cutting the season down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get that. And kind of play a little devil's advocate on your point, Parker. I think there is also a uniqueness to it and a strategy behind it of baseball is a very long season. And so, football, you play 17 games and you throw your best guys out there every single week. They go, 110% every single week, put everything they've got on the line every single week, because they only play 17 games. And I'm not saying that baseball players go out there and only play at, 50%, but there's also a part of it from manager's standpoint and like a clubhouse standpoint of, all right, how do we manage this long 162 game season to be the team with the most longevity? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. And you've seen it, like, I think we've had one of the best examples over the last 5 years, because you see a team like the Dodgers, who year in and year out seem to be a really solid team, who perform pretty well throughout the regular season. And with the exception of this year they look absolutely incredible. The last couple of years, it's notable for them to play a really good season and then start to decline through the playoffs, maybe showing that they don't quite have the longevity that some other teams do. And I don't know if that's because they tend to have an older team. It's almost like the Lakers of the MLBs at some points, where they have some of the older guys that retire to that team, and they're still always pretty good. I know it's not a great comparison, but you can almost see that a little bit. But then you see them in the 2020 shortened season, and they ran through those playoffs because they were in the heat of their season, where in the regular season, that's the point of their season where they're showing that they can play the best baseball. They just don't have that longevity to play to the very end. And so some people like to put an asterisk next to that World Series.
But doesn't that mean, though, that the product is getting worse? Because if it's lessening the significance of each game, you're managing the games, which is like the load management argument in the NBA, where like you're not putting your best players out there every single week because you have more games, so you have to manage the season. But then, like, if baseball was shortened in half, basically, like, you could get rid of players that are on the fringe, that are just there for longevity purposes, and you can basically put more of your best players out there on a consistent basis. Like if you only played one game every 4 days as opposed to, or every 4 or 5 days as opposed to every 2 or 3 days, you could give your pitchers more time, more breaks in between. You wouldn't need as many of them. You save money. Like, I don't know. It would just be a better product if the best players are playing.
Well, I think there's also to that. I think that's part of the game of baseball and what baseball has always been. And it's not a powerhouse sport. It's not the kind of sport where like you have to put your best guys out all the time. Like, I don't know if that makes sense at all. Like, I say it's not a powerhouse sport. I don't know. Like, Owen, do you kind of see what I'm trying to say here? And like, it's more of a thinking game.
Yeah. It's not like a super high intensity all the time game. It's meant to be a little bit more leisurely than like football or basketball. But also, I don't want us to get stuck on the best players don't play all the time in baseball. Like most of the games, you're running out your same starters.
Mhm.
Like 90 to 95% of the Phillies games, like they've got their main guys out there. I don't want it to seem like there's an NBA load management problem here. Those are two very separate issues. So I don't want us, we're kind of starting to go down that track. I don't want us to get caught on saying like, yeah, the MLB has an issue with that, because I don't think they do. Your best players are out there the majority of the time. People aren't coming to Phillies games and complaining like, oh, Bryce Harper's sitting again. Like your guys are out there the majority of the time. Nick Castellanos played 162 out of 162. I think 5 or 6 guys did that, but like the majority of your best players are going to play 140 to 150 out of 162. So that's plenty. I think saying that we have to shorten the baseball season is like saying we shouldn't have any long distance races in the Olympics because they're not as exciting as the sprints. Like there's a different technique to it, and yeah, it's not as exciting all the time, but it's still every point in the race matters. You're just like watching for different things, and yeah, it's not as high intensity, but like those long distance races for people who enjoy it are still really exciting. And then the 100-meter dash is generally the most exciting to everybody just because it's so short and like yeah, so it's more conducive to the average fan. Like yeah, of course the 100-meter dash is more exciting. Of course it's more exciting if there's less games, but there is also an art to the long distance race.
Right. And I get that. But the long distance race is like still like 30 minutes, you know. It's like this season is literally like 8 months or however long it is. And you're playing a game like almost every day during the season. That's what concerns me about the longevity of baseball. It's like, okay, if we're not creating superstars, I think there is with Shohei Ohtani and Bryce Harper, but still I feel like it's not quite as significant culturally as it used to be. And if they can't figure that out and like get it up there with basketball, football, long term for baseball, like we're just gonna see a steady decline. And then once that happens, views go down. That's when players get paid less. That's when the sport starts to like, that's when it starts to like get worse in like the actual like less people are gonna play it when they're younger. Like they're just gonna be focused on baseball, basketball, and it's like not gonna be good for the sport of baseball. So like I don't know. Long term, I just feel like they got to do something to like make it more entertaining because it's like it's lacking, I feel. But
can I ask you a question just like out of clarity? Because I don't know if I misheard you or if I just wasn't understanding what you said. But were you saying like because of its longevity, baseball has less superstars? Is that what you were trying to argue towards?
I feel like they're pushing. There's like, I feel like it's harder to like, I don't know. The superstars I feel like aren't as culturally relevant. Maybe that's just because of who they are and their personalities, but
I think it's also because being a superstar on a baseball team is a lot harder than like if you're a superstar on a basketball, you're one of 5 guys on your team on the court and you can do a lot of work. If you know, I don't want to say carry, but essentially carry. Like
you can carry your team more than somebody can carry a team in baseball.
Exactly, because in baseball, you get 1 out of every 9 at bats. And you can hit a home run in your 1 at bat, but if everybody else strikes out, that home run means nothing. And so people aren't gonna see that. You can be a star shortstop and make every play that comes to you. But if the ball's not getting hit to you, you're not going to be able to show your abilities. And so you can be perfect at the plate. You can be perfect in the field. But baseball is such a team sport from the aspect of you don't ever know where the ball is going to go. You only get one in every 9 at bats. And so I feel like I agree, it's harder for superstars to be culturally relevant because you don't see them, dropping 50 points 3 times a week in the NBA, which obviously doesn't happen. But like, you don't see that happen. You obviously don't see that happening. And like, if Joel Embiid drops 50 points and the Sixers lose, like that's insane. Like if Joel Embiid drops 50 points, I feel like there's a solid chance that the Sixers are going to win that game. Whereas if Bryce Harper goes into a game and hits 4 home runs and they're all solo shots and the rest of our offense does nothing, that's only 4 runs and that's only 4 points. Like there's a good chance the other team outscored that 4. So
yeah,
I still think though, like when baseball was the top sport in America, it didn't matter. I agree with your point, but like we've seen it possible for baseball players to be the superstars when the sport is the top dog and the most culturally relevant. So like the cultural relevancy of the sport does also matter a lot. Like these guys can be superstars if baseball is the most popular sport. But it is also tougher. I do agree with that. So I'm not like trying to disagree with that point. I just think that culturally it is also tougher. And I don't have, to Parker's point from before, I don't have the numbers with me or in my head. Maybe we can do some research on it later, or do your own research if you're listening. But I believe baseball is up every year post-COVID, like in all the number. Like baseball is improving. They're still for sure behind football and basketball. And I don't know if it's possible for them to catch football and basketball, but baseball as a whole, from their numbers year over year, is improving.
Yeah, I mean, comparing it to even football, it's like football plays 17 games. That is so much more concentrated. Like there's only 7 appearances that your team gets a year, and then you're lucky if they're one of the few playoff teams to get to watch, 3 or 4 more games maybe. And so it's like, I don't know, and I'll be the first to say it. I'd rather watch a regular season Eagles game than a regular season Phillies game. Like,
it matters
more. Deny it. It matters more, and it's more entertaining. Like, regular season Phillies game, if I was going to watch all 162, I'd be bored out of my mind. Doesn't mean I don't like turning on a Phillies game when I'm home and I have, and I'm able to turn on a Phillies game. I'll happily watch it. But baseball is also one of those things where I can turn on a game and watch a few innings of it and not sit down and watch all 9 innings. Whereas when the Eagles come on, I want to watch every minute of that, all 60 minutes. So
baseball is designed to be leisurely, and that, allows you to be leisurely. Like you can just kind of enjoy the game a bit more because it's not as intense. Yeah. So we got like detoured on the whole fixing baseball. Where does it fit in culture?
I love talking about fixing baseball.
I know you do.
It's very entertaining.
We've gotten into it quite a bit recently. But I want to shout out, to get back to the Phillies losing, I want to shout out 2 NL East fan bases. First of all, shout out to Braves fans, because now we feel your pain. I would say we don't even feel the pain that Braves fans did, because they won 100+ games and then lost in the divisional round. So, like, that might even be worse. They did win
to a division rival.
Yeah, they did win a World Series in 2021, so that kind of probably you feel a little bit less pain, because it's like, we did get that one recently. But still, after an amazing regular season, to come in and lose in 4 games in the NLDS to a division rival sucks. So we're with you, Braves fans. What a weird sentence to say. But it sucks. It sucks. We kind of understand a little bit more the pain that we put you through the past 2 years. And shout out Mets fans for really just, upping our views and our comments, and our analytics are going crazy.
Y'all helped our analytics so much, so shout out to you. Some of you were also really clever reading through those comments. I'm not gonna lie.
Emphasis on some. A lot of them.
Some of them are just stupid. Some of them actually made me laugh. So,
Luke, what was your favorite
kudos.
comment?
My favorite comment, I can't even. I don't even remember. I probably sent a picture of it to you guys. Let's see if I can. Or maybe it was one that Owen sent a picture to of us.
My favorite was one.
Okay. I
Okay.
know. My favorite's the one that you sent to us. This just proves that anybody can get on this app and just say anything they want. I think that's my favorite purely
Yes.
because quite literally is the point of social media. Is that anybody can get on social media and anybody can say what they want. Like,
It's like, shout out to you, you figured it out.
Oh
Great
my
job.
gosh. Free speech.
I-
No way. Oh, is
So-
that really an amendment? That's crazy.
Check the Bill of Rights.
Our founding fathers, man. They're genius. I
Yeah.
just didn't realize it until this moment when these guys were talking. So we pointed people to George Washington.
That's our goal when we started this podcast was to do that. My favorite comment was one Mets fan.
And by the way, we're referring to a video that was on our TikTok.
Oh yeah. If you go anywhere on our socials, on Instagram, the one that blew up, Luke got lucky, I don't know. Luke's didn't blow up because he only said the Phillies would win in the series 3-1. I said the Phillies would win 3-0, and mine got 33,000 on TikTok and 40,000 on Instagram. So yeah, basically. They mostly didn't like that I tried to make a comparison.
It got on the Mets album.
It hit the Mets algorithm hard. They didn't like that I made a comparison of the Eagles coming off a bye, playing the Giants, who had some momentum, saying the Phillies were off a bye and the Mets had some momentum. I was right about the Mets having momentum, at least. But yeah, they didn't like that I tried to make a comparison across sports, and it was very wrong. It happens. I had faith in the Phillies, and they did not do that at all. So my favorite comment was a Mets fan, who I guess is really into Grimace, said some bad words, and then said, think about losing while enjoy the loss while thinking about Grimace's balls dragging on you. And I was like, how do you even think of that as an insult? I sent it to the sportscasters group chat, all the Full Sail people. And we were like, whoa, what even is that comment? And I was like, I didn't even know Grimace had genitals. Like, he's just a blob. I don't think... Why did you even assume that he has balls? I don't know where they got that from.
Wow. No, that's out of pocket. I think it's so funny that Luke had someone on his personal Instagram.
That was wild.
Yeah, that was insane. I had, one of the people I guess that saw it on Instagram track it back to my personal Instagram, which I guess isn't that hard because all of our personal Instagrams are tagged in the, description or bio.
It wasn't even your take though. But if anything, they would have gone to mine.
Yeah, it was. It was just. So I thought that was hilarious. Shout out to Mets fans, like you said, for helping our algorithm. I don't have a problem with them. Like, respect. Like, you guys have a good team. I never said the Mets were a bad team.
If we would have posted, in the NBA, back before the series against the Sixers,
the Knicks Sixers,
the Knicks Sixers series. If we would have posted a video like that with my take, it would have been the same exact thing.
Mm-hmm. The New York fans were chanting F Embiid after a Yankees win. Like the Mets, the New York people clearly have a big issue with Philly.
There's a big, there's a lot going on in New York they don't like down here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the them problem, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. That was my main takeaway. Was at first when the like hate comments started coming in, it felt a little bit bad. I was like, geez, I was wrong about picking my team to win a series. Sorry, I didn't say anything like disparaging against the Mets that I thought would offend them, but it really did. And then as they kept coming in over the whole week, I was like, okay, clearly they just like get enjoyment out of our misery. Like, and then after that we posted I was recording myself when Francisco Lindor hit the grand slam, and that one didn't blow up as much, but like still got a bunch of comments. And I was like, okay, so it's super clear that you guys just really enjoy seeing the other team's fans suffer, which is a weird. I don't understand getting that much. I loved when the Phillies beat the Mets. I wasn't like, I love seeing these sad Braves fans. Like, no, I was enjoying my team winning. I wasn't focused on the Braves fans.
It's a New York problem.
So that was my big takeaway. I was like, wow, you guys, absolutely your problem. You really get a lot of enjoyment out of other people's pain, which is really sad. I'm sorry that that's what brings you joy.
New York has good bagels, bad sports fans.
Yeah, that's a T-shirt.
Another comment I saw a lot was just like, man, you guys are just a bunch of biased Philly fans. I was like, yes. I mean,
the name
all Philly all the time. Does that not like?
We were wearing Phillies
shirts.
Of
course, I'm gonna be biased to the Phillies. Whether I think they're gonna win or whether I think they're gonna lose, I'm gonna say they're gonna win. I'm a biased fan.
Right. Any fan has bias.
Exactly.
If you're a fan of anything, you're gonna have bias towards it because you're a fan of it. That's literally what it means.
That's in the definition.
If you asked me as a baseball fan who I thought was going to win, I probably would have given you a better, more thought out analysis. If you ask me as a Phillies fan who I think is going to win, I'm going to tell you the Phillies 10 times out of 10.
And that's what happens when you make something for a target audience and it goes to not the target audience. So it's going to happen on the internet. It's okay. It was I think Parker was saying it's like our first taste of, this type of internet. I don't know what word you use, but yeah, basically our first full-blown internet experience with this kind of seeing this is what the internet's really like.
This is what the algorithm does.
Yeah.
This is once it gets somewhere, the algorithm keeps feeding it to those people that it knows will comment on it.
Yeah. And Luke was like, we made it. We're receiving hate comments. We've arrived. So
That was awesome.
We're rolling with it.
That was awesome.
So our most viewed TikTok by a mile, and our now most viewed Instagram reel also, because the past 4 days that one really spiked on Instagram, and now our most viewed one by the Phillies playoff content are our 1 and 2 most viewed Instagram reels, because I made a reel before last playoff saying the Braves better not lose to the Phillies again, and then that one went off, and now this one is our top viewed one. So again, thank you, Mets fans. We'll be talking more about the Phillies. I think we're going to do some off-season stuff. We loved working with Tyler, doing live streams on Heat Ratio Sports and on here, but with Heat Ratio Sports, collaborating on those. So I think we're definitely going to do more content with him. Don't have any details for you guys, but obviously we'll let you know so you can look out for it. But we'll definitely do some Phillies off-season stuff. We'll probably do some Sixers stuff with him. I'm thinking maybe we can do some Flyers because he knows more about the Flyers than us. So I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
We've talked about we need to learn more about the Flyers, beef up our knowledge on them. So there's a lot of opportunities for stuff. So we will not stop talking about the Phillies. It was very, very, very sad that they lost. I think that maybe if we were to redraft we did our worst Philly moments draft a month or two ago. I think that this would be on the board for me because the hopes were so high of this was the best regular season the Phillies had in basically a decade almost. More than a decade, and for it to end so abruptly was really crazy.
I think it would. I think it would have been hard to have it on the board just because it's the hopes were high, but there was no production in the playoffs. Absolutely no. If we would have done well and maybe lost in 5 to the Mets and put up good fights, and it was the Mets walked it off. I guess if we lost in 5, the Mets couldn't have walked it off. But it's something like that. Or if we were beating the Mets and then lost in the CS, then maybe. But we just looked bad in the playoffs, so there just wasn't. I don't know.
That's why I think it's worse, because it was just more demoralizing. Of we didn't even see the Phillies we expected to see. It feels better if you put up a good fight. To me, it feels better if you put up a good fight. We did our best. They just outplayed us. The Mets did outplay us. It just I think it's more
put up a fight.
It's more heartbreaking to me that we didn't even see a good version of the Phillies put up a fight.
Yeah.
So, preference. The Lindor Grand Slam's a pretty that's gonna go down as like a Philly moment in those like highlight or low light
Mm.
montages of like
Yeah.
Philly tragic moments. Like that's in there now in the
That
pantheon.
was all they scored that game, was just that one home run.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
speaking
So-
of all they scored, Nick Sirriani came out this week,
Shaved head and all, baby.
shaved head and all, looking like a an egg with no shell. He was just an egg.
An egg with no shell is just like the yolk and whites. Like
Exactly. He was awful.
Yeah.
Nobody likes a raw egg.
And I think that's a good place to start because we're recording this right after the Cleveland game.
we should say the Eagles won.
They did win. They did
I
win
don't
against
care.
Deshaun Watson in a very, very inaccurate, self-sabotaging Cleveland Browns team. Okay.
We barely beat a banged up, injured out of their minds, fourth string running back, Deshaun Watson led.
Both starting on the
Cleveland
3-yard
Browns.
line.
Like, what more can I say about how awful this Browns team is for us to barely beat them?
And here's the thing. We should start with Nick Sirianni because yes, the Eagles are 3-2. They're through their bye week. They have one of the easiest schedules left in the NFL. But he doesn't feel safe.
And we haven't.
It feels like he isn't doing his job, right? I was telling Luke and Owen this earlier, but he's not the offensive coordinator. He's not the defensive coordinator. So what does he do? He's a game manager, and he's supposed to have the guys ready to go because he's got a bunch of coaches, like defensive line coaches, offensive line, quarterback coaches that help with those specific roles. So he has to have his team ready to go coming out into the game. And usually they game plan for the first drive, so you know like what you're going to be getting. They have 0 points through 5 games in the first quarter. So he's clearly not getting them ready to go. And in terms of his actual play calling ability, he's self-sabotaged, or sorry, not play calling, but game managing. He makes the wrong calls. When they should be going for it, when they shouldn't be. We've seen it throughout the first 5 weeks. So he doesn't seem to be doing his job. What are your thoughts on that?
If this is the Nick Sirianni bandwagon, and this is me, I'm off. Maybe, in the beginning, he took us to a Super Bowl. I was so high on Nick Sirianni, I was like, this is the man. This is the guy that's going to win us a Super Bowl. And then, years go by, next year, whatever. Last year, obviously, as we were, were we 10-0 before we went on our losing streak? Maybe we were 10-1. 10-1. And, it was like, oh, this guy's great. We're doing great. And then we had the collapse of a century. And I was like, dang, put the blame on Nick Sirianni. I wasn't super high on him, but I was also just like, all right, it wasn't just Nick Sirianni. Hurts didn't look great. Things didn't look great. It was just a bad overall collapse. So rather than put the blame on one specific person, I said, we're just going to go to next year. They figured things out, right? Going into this year, I wasn't super high on Nick Sirianni, but I wasn't low on him. I was like, all right, Nick, what you got for us? And just every game, it's just a step closer to the ledge. And this week,
was this the
I'm
tipping
off.
point for you?
Mm-hmm.
This was the tipping point for me.
But they won, Luke. They won though. So what's
care.
the tipping point? What was it that made you jump off
His
this?
bald head.
Was it actually?
Wow, that's what it was.
Are you serious?
Swooshing around on the grass of Lincoln Financial Field.
So
him
there wasn't
shaving
like a
his head.
moment in the game. It was before the
No,
game.
not his bald head. There's not. I can't even pinpoint a specific moment in this game when I said I'm off the Nick Sirianni bandwagon. It's just like you're facing a 1-4, now 1-5 Browns team who is shown every week that they're just horrendously awful. Deshaun Watson, we made look like he could be an award-winning quarterback after his performance today.
He was like
And
10 for 10 at one point in the second half.
exactly. Like, Deshaun Watson is not that good. He's the star of my anti-fantasy league, which if you don't know about that, maybe we'll have to tell you about that. Tell you guys about that more at some point in time. Basically, in short, you draft bad people. And Deshaun Watson has carried me week in and week out of that league. And for us to let him do what he did today, ugh.
You think Luke
You know
is
what?
just really
Maybe
upset that Deshaun Watson did well because his anti-league team didn't score as many points?
Yeah,
Is
he's-
that the motivation behind all of this?
I'm still gonna win an anti-fantasy
Oh,
this
okay,
week,
never
so
mind.
it doesn't matter. Maybe you know what? Maybe the breaking point for me, and this has really nothing to do with Nick Sirianni, but I think it says a lot about his leadership, is when C.J. Gardner-Johnson has his first pass breakup of the season, and it's on our very own Quinyon Mitchell. I think that is the moment where I'm like, I just want Quinyon to succeed. I don't like CJ anymore because he's, taking things away from our young guys, and blame it all on Nick Sirianni.
But here's an argument on that one. Didn't CJ Gardner-Johnson get his interception taken away by Quinyon Mitchell? Because Quinyon Mitchell is playing the wide receiver. CJ's
Yeah, that's a
coming
fair point.
over in coverage. He has the
He
was
has
the
the
one,
angle.
He had the angle.
Yeah.
He had it in his hands first, and Quinyon knocked it out of his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm more biased towards Quinyon because he's our rookie corner who's been playing really well, and I want him to get his first NFL interception. And CJ hasn't really done much for us this year.
He hasn't. He really hasn't.
I think there's just a little bias in there. So that scenario aside, I don't really care what happened in it. But I just think overall this game showed that Nick Sirianni is not being a good coach or a good leader for this Eagles team. And I want him out of there. Robert Saleh. Is it Saleh or Saleh? Saleh. S-A-L-E-H. Okay. Yeah. I heard somebody on one platform say Saleh, and I was like, I don't think that's right. And now it's stuck in my head, and I can't get it out. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, that CJ 3-year deal is looking a little bit scary right now with how he's playing, and we'll have 2 more seasons of this on his deal. But back to Sirianni, what do you think, Parker?
Well, I already told you what I think. I told you that I don't think he's a good game manager.
But
I don't think he has the team ready to go.
Do you fire him because of those thoughts you have?
Okay.
Sorry, I should have asked not what do you think of Sirianni. What did the Eagles do about this?
Okay, so in my opinion, they really can't do anything right now. You're 3-2, so it's not like it's desperation time. Even if you lose the next 5-6 games, like say you're 3-7, right? 3-10. Like, yes, it's a horrible season, and it looks really, really bad. But I don't think you can fire him and do much better. I mean, like, you already have your OCs and DCs, so if you're that bad and you keep losing, like, okay, some of the blame has to go onto them too. Same with the players. So I think that this year we're going to be riding it out with Nick Sirianni no matter what. I want to reevaluate once the season's over because I don't think he's too bad. Like, yes, he got us to a Super Bowl. Like, we did still start out 10-1 last year. Like, that still happened, and we were in the playoffs, right? So, like, even if we missed the playoffs this year, like, if we miss the playoffs, I think Nick's gone, but I don't think it's till the end of the season. So I think you just need to reevaluate come end of the year, see what's going on. I think we just got to write him out. And I don't like him, like I said, but he can still turn it around for me. If he has, if the Eagles are good the rest of this year and they end up, winning a playoff game or 2 or doing what we expected them to do at the beginning of the year, which is going super far into the playoffs, then Nick Sirianni's off the hot seat. So I really just don't want to make too much of a rash decision right now.
Yeah, I agree with Luke, where I felt like in the offseason, people, or like the end of last year going into this year, people being like, we don't want to keep Sirianni. I blamed most of last year on the coordinators, personally. I felt like it was a coordinator issue. Now, this year, when we're seeing a lot of the same issues that we saw last year with different coordinators, now I'm starting to be more like, okay, what's the common thread here? It's Nick Sirianni. I'm always very patient with coaches. People love to jump the gun on wanting to fire coaches right away. And I'm like, okay, in coaches in general in sports, not even football, like people with Rob Thompson are like, fire Rob. I'm like, who are you going to get that's better? But yeah, Sirianni, it doesn't seem like something's clicking. So I'm also with Parker, like, I don't want to fire him this year. The Eagles aren't that type of dysfunctional organization. Like, the teams with unstable front offices, owners, GMs, they do that. The Eagles are too stable to do that. If they fire him because of underperforming this year, it'll be at the end of this season. But yeah, the Eagles definitely. I didn't believe at the beginning of the year that Nick Sirianni should be on the hot seat. I was like, that's a bit aggressive. Now I think he definitely is on the hot seat where the Eagles have to perform this year or else he's gone. So even I, the patient person with coaches, like, whoa, don't put him on the hot seat. Even I think he's on the hot seat because the Eagles haven't scored, not just because of this, but the one thing that we were talking about during the game, Parker, the Eagles haven't scored a point in the Eagles haven't scored a point in the first quarter this season. They're not coming out prepared, which is the main thing Sirianni is supposed to be doing. And especially off a bye week, you should be coming out that you shouldn't have a better start. And against a bad team, you only put up 20 points. The defense was actually really good. Like, they held the Browns to 2 field goals. But also the Browns really shot themselves in the foot for most of this.
A lot of big run plays.
The Browns handed the Eagles...
to a 4th string running back. Yeah, you're right.
The Browns handed the Eagles this win, gift-wrapped nicely, just don't blow it, here you go. Like, the Browns had plenty of chances. They had a bunch of penalties and dropped passes, bad plays. Like, yeah, they gave the Eagles every opportunity to win this game. The Eagles had to win it. And in what felt like coming off of a bye should have been an amazing performance, was so far from it. So, like you were saying, Luke, like, we don't really care that much. Obviously, in the grand scheme of things, it's great to get a win, because if they lost, that's a big problem. So we're glad they won. But Nick Sirianni certainly didn't help his case, even though they got the win.
I disagree with you, Owen. I think that the Eagles defense did not look good this week. Yeah, we held the Browns to, 2 field goals offensively. But, like...
Let's look up the stats.
There were a couple big plays that we gave up, but I think that's just what this defense is. Like, it's not an elite defense. The run defense has underperformed all year. Like, obviously, I'd love to have a better run defense, but I think that's just kind of how it is.
Maybe that's a better way to look at it. Just right. I don't think this defense did very well today. Parker, let's hear those stats.
Cleveland offensively today, Deshaun Watson, 16 for 23, 168 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Deontay Foreman, 10 rushes for 31 yards. Strong Jr., 8 rushes for 43 yards. Deshaun had 4 rushes for 17 yards. Receiving, you had Amari Cooper, 4 for 42. Njoku, 5 for 31. And really not much else.
Okay, so that's actually not as bad as I thought. I think they just strung them together at the right times.
Yeah. Like, there were a couple back-to-back. And then
it made it look bigger than it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Overall, it wasn't. Yeah, it definitely wasn't amazing considering who you're playing. But I just don't think I have that high of expectations for the defense at this point. I want them to be better, but they're just not.
And they did. The defense did have like 5 or 6 sacks too.
Mm-hmm. Again, against the Browns, who allow sacks to everybody.
Deshaun, who I think is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL right now. So.
But at least they did it. Like,
that's true.
They didn't show us anything for 4 weeks. Like,
that's a good point.
They almost doubled their team sack total. They went from 6 to 11 on the season. So maybe that'll get their momentum going. Like, hopefully that gives them some confidence. Like how with the Phillies we talked about. Here I go making cross-sport references again. We talked about Pete Alonso doesn't hit in clutch situations. But then against the Brewers, he hit that home run. And then that seemed to give him some confidence. And he hit 2 more opposite field home runs, which is unprecedented for Pete Alonso. So maybe, even though it's against the Browns, maybe it'll give them some confidence. So like, okay, we did these good things. Let's keep doing them against better teams. And hopefully they're able to.
And now cue the comments for Owen making a cross-sport reference about how Pete Alonso and the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line are nothing alike.
I was complimenting Pete Alonso. Yeah. So, how do we feel about the Eagles' season moving forward right now?
Well, we need to figure out more about the Jordan Mailata hamstring injury.
Yeah. He
did get carted off the field, which is not good. Hopefully he can return, but like that's a huge blow to the offensive line. Lane Johnson he's still iffy. Like when he plays, he's dominant. but he's been in and out of the lineup, I feel like, for the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So the offensive line is like, if that struggles, we're gonna really struggle. You have Darius Slay that went out of the game. Don't know what that's about. So, and we already saw injuries to Devontae and AJ Brown. So it's like, it very much worries
And
me.
Dallas Goedert now.
Dallas Goedert's out now. So
Yeah.
like, if we don't have our full strength team, I don't think we're very deep. I don't think that the players that are coming in are gonna stand up against solid competition. Like, they're just average, in my opinion. So I'm very worried. I could see this Eagles season just going a very average 10-7, 9-8. Like, I can see
I
that
agree.
as a possibility if they get hurt and they don't start stringing together some wins. Yeah, I'm worried.
I mean,
about
our team as a full strength, on paper, absolutely stacked roster could barely perform. Now you put in a bunch of second string, third string guys, to fill in for the injured guys. I mean, yeah, average I think is going to be a really good way to describe it. And I mean, I hope that we have a winning season. I think it'll be very embarrassing to go under 500 this year. But I mean, I don't even think we're going to win our own division this year.
the defense is bad.
I mean, the
Washington
Cowboys aren't
exists.
great. Washington Commanders, I think, I'm saying it right now. Washington Commanders are going to win the NFC East.
So we're sending
I
this
think-
clip to Luke McCluster.
I told him this weekend when he was here in Grove City in my dorm. I said the Washington Commanders are going to win the NFC East this year. And as
Wow.
bad as that sounds, well, first off, I'm glad it's them and not the Cowboys. Second off, Jaden Daniels has been balling out over there in Washington. And yeah, they just lost to the Ravens today, but the Ravens are a really good team. First really good team that they've seen all year. But I think Jaden Daniels is still young and he's still put up good numbers against the Ravens and just, obviously didn't come out on top today. But I think as the year goes on and as he figures it out more, I think the Commanders are going to finish the season pretty strong.
Okay.
Assuming no injuries comes to their team,
Yeah. I agree on the lack of optimism. To say right now they're not going to win the division is a bit of a reach to me, but I understand it. It's totally plausible. The Commanders look very good right now. I would say I'm kind of in a mode with the Eagles that's similar to how I think we're going to be treating the Phillies now, of just like, we don't care about the regular season. We don't care what your record is. We care a little bit we don't really care what your seed is in the playoffs. I think my mentality with the Eagles right now is just like, whatever your record is, whatever your seed is, just get into the playoffs and play well in the playoffs. Like, you don't have to have it all figured out and be running perfectly
Absolutely.
in week 7. I care about how you're doing week 17, 18, and in the playoffs. Like, how do you perform there? Because if it clicks in the wild card round, divisional round, we don't care what happened in the regular season. No one remembers that as long as you perform in the playoffs. And that's the mentality the Sixers are coming up. That's the same mentality with them. Like, with all these Philly teams, they're so good. We don't care that much how you do in every single regular season game. You can have a great regular season, and we don't care because you haven't been able to perform in the playoffs. So that's all that matters to us.
Especially when it comes to the 76ers.
The Sixers are on their own.
Like, they're on
level.
their whole other tier.
They make the playoffs all the time and don't do anything.
and do
but
nothing every year. It's
Yeah.
like
they're in their own special category. That's a
Yeah.
good point.
yeah, they're the worst of the worst when it
Mhm.
comes to Philly sports in that regard.
Yeah.
Pulled up the betting odds here. Eagles are still the favorites to win the division, plus 135. Washington is plus 180. So it's not like it's too much of a difference. Dallas is
No.
plus 250. And then you have the Giants, who are plus 3,500.
the one New York team that doesn't have Philadelphia's number, the Giants.
Yeah.
And then that'll probably get clipped if the Giants end up beating the Eagles when they play them next week or 2 weeks from now. Anyway, but yeah, that's plus 3,500 is kind of. The Giants haven't been terrible this year. Shout out to the Giants. You haven't been as atrocious.
You have
as
Malik
we
Neighbors.
expected.
Malik Neighbors.
Okay.
Knowing the Giants,
Yeah.
they're probably going to trade away Malik Neighbors to the Eagles in like
wow.
a couple of years. So we just have to
Once-
wait for that moment.
Once we don't have Saquon, we get Malik
So that-
Neighbors.
AJ will retire, and we'll replace him with Malik Neighbors because the Giants are so dysfunctional that they're going to give us Malik Neighbors and not pay him.
That would be awesome. But yeah, I think that the Eagles will still be decent this year. But even if they are, it's just how do you do in the playoffs? So they could go 10-7, be the 7 seed, and make it to the Super Bowl. And like, oh great, we did it. So yeah, I don't really have that much stock in this.
Yeah, I mean the regular season. If you get as far as to make the playoffs, regular season means nothing. It means absolutely
Reset.
nothing. Exactly.
Mhm.
You're 0-0,
Mhm.
except every game you play is a go home game.
Except for in football, the bye is more of an advantage than in baseball.
Yes.
Like the bye is actually
Yes.
really nice there. Baseball, there's the whole discussion of it kills momentum. We're seeing how much momentum matters in the baseball playoffs. Football, very different. So getting that bye would be awesome. And it's still possible. Like if the Eagles return to 2022 form, which doesn't seem likely, but if, and they like the NFC is pretty wide open. Like the Niners look good, but they're in kind of the same mode where like they don't care as much about the regular season.
I argue that the Niners don't look good.
Okay, they looked really good on Thursday. They're definitely not in like their prime.
Right. The
mode.
Lions,
Yeah,
I think the
they've
Lions look
looked-
pretty good.
The Lions look good.
The
The Lions
Vikings
look
look
good.
Vikings look insane, but does anybody expect them to continue this and like actually
They're-
finish as the top seed?
Their defense is
Yeah.
elite.
Yes.
Can Sam Darnold
Yes.
keep them
That's-
as the top seed?
Yeah, they'll be good. I don't know if they'll stay as the top seed. Probably the Lions, but like the NFC is pretty wide open. There's not like a
Yeah.
clear juggernaut. The Lions are probably the best, but yeah. So just getting
There's other teams that look good in times. Like,
yeah.
I mean, the Bucks looked so good against
Mhm.
us. They've had their moments in other
The
games where
Bucks
they
look
look
like
good.
a great
The
playoff
Packers
team.
have their moments. The Packers look good at times. The Saints have their moments.
The
They're
Saints
falling
had their
off.
moments in
They
the first
had,
2
yeah,
weeks.
Yeah,
I think they're
moments,
2
guess,
and
the
4
last
now.
couple
They're
weeks.
2 and 4.
Yeah, but yeah. Point being, the
Yeah, last
NFC
couple
is
weeks haven't been great, but
yeah, the NFC is wide open. So like just being in the mix of those teams, I don't think there's huge gaps. Even with the Eagles, I don't think there's huge gaps there.
If the Eagles just make it to the playoffs theoretically, and then they get healthy at the right moment, like they can go on a great run
Yeah.
in the postseason.
Yeah, so
Like-
just get there.
If they get there and they get there healthy, I am very excited for the Eagles postseason. But that's super far
Yeah.
down the road. Who knows? I could see a world where they don't make the playoffs. And Nick Sirianni's fired. I could also see a
If
world.
they don't make the playoffs, he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
For sure.
I could see a world though where they get healthy at the right point
Mhm.
and they go really far. So I don't know. It's wide open this year. I think that makes it more exciting.
Mhm.
You want them to win every game, and so you're watching every game like, oh, what's going to happen here? Is Nick Sirianni going to be gone next year? I don't know. But it's an interesting discussion. So
It's crazy how fast, in the course of like less than 2 months, we went from doing our preview show and the Eagles are going to go 14-3, 13-4. This team's going to be awesome to I just hope that they make the playoffs and Nick Sirianni might get fired. Like,
yeah,
our expectations have been lowered significantly.
it's gotten a lot worse.
So
I think we've learned as a Philly fan that you can't have hope. You have to have realistic expectations.
Yeah.
And a
And so
realistic
we'll test
expectation
that.
is
We'll test that next week when we put out our
Yes.
76ers content.
Mhm. the
About
Sixers are the ultimate version of that.
Yes, we will test that and put that to our test when we put out our Sixers preview for the year.
Yeah. And something I want to talk about in like this episode's been long enough, we've talked about enough, but like incoming episodes, something I definitely want to discuss is like there's all the posts going around now of like Philly sports pain in the past 24 months of like all these different things, which have been incredibly painful. But my case is like I would rather have those where we had hope and got our hopes crushed than be some of these fan bases where your team sucks every year or where your team is mediocre every year, which is even worse. But like I would rather have good teams that give us hope, that get into the playoffs and then do break our hearts. as Shakespeare said, it's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. I think did Shakespeare say that? I think that's Shakespeare. That's a famous quote from somebody. You never heard that? It's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. Oh, that's like that's a super famous.
But
Yeah,
I think you just pulled that out, and I was just like,
we've come full circle. We go from a sports podcast to an English literature podcast.
Because I would rather have a good team that ends up breaking my heart than to just have a bad team and the season isn't fun at any point, you know?
I could just see Owen at an Eagles game. You know, the Eagles just lost, and he starts cursing out the opposing fans, but not with curse words, with Shakespearean insults. He's like,
should we end the episode there?
I think we need to cut it off while we're not at too low of a low.
So that's a topic I want to discuss another time, potentially with more or less Shakespeare quotes involved. But I think it's an interesting conversation to be had. Like Parker said, keep an eye out for our Sixers preview show. The season's about to start. We are excited. We're excited. We're not too excited, don't worry, but we're excited to see the Sixers play because it's general consensus that this is going to be a fun team if they're all healthy. It has the potential to be a very exciting team to watch. So we're excited to watch them, and we're going to talk about what we think this season could hold. So keep an eye out for that. Eagles win. Again, to reiterate it, Eagles win. They're 3-2. The season is still very much alive. And yeah, since last time we were on, the Phillies did lose. Their season is over. So that's really sad. But thank you guys for joining us. If anyone new came over from seeing us with Heat Ratio Sports, comment, let us know. We'd love to get to know you guys and be like, shout out to Tyler. Be like, thanks, Tyler. This person is a fan of both of us now. They came from you to us, so that'd be super cool. If any of you did come from Heat Ratio Sports, let us know. And anybody who's been here already, you know that we appreciate you guys. We're at 495 subscribers.
So close. Get to 500.
The big 500.
That's half of a mil.
When we hit 500, we'll have a special for you guys. A little surprise coming your way.
We'll have to discuss what that is because I like that idea. So
you're supposed to play along and be like, yes, we already have it right.
Yes, we have something planned, and it's going to be the most amazing thing that you've ever seen, so don't miss it. Let's get to 500 subscribers. We'll see you guys next time.